Most people have no idea what really goes into building a house or how easy it is to get ripped off. Today, I'm here with a builder who's been in it for 20 plus years, almost as long as I've been alive. And today, he's going to talk to you all about some of the mistakes he's made, lost tens of thousands, but also some of the huge income, huge profits he's made when building. Julius Hayes, great to have you in. Great to have you in, man.
It's always a pleasure.
Definitely. So we know that you've been in it for 20 plus years. We know that you're one of the area's top builders. But let's talk about before. Let's talk about how you got into it. Like, how did you get into real estate in the first place, and how did you get into building? Like, did you come from like a family of builders? Like, did you just like know real estate growing up? Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, so very humble beginnings,
Okay.
in real estate. I don't come from this background. I used to be in the military. I worked on airplanes. The only thing I knew about a house is you flip the light switch and the lights come on. Right?
Yeah.
Through some friends who were in the real estate business, they started pulling me more towards it to figure out ways to diversify funds, build, kind of a rental portfolio and things of that nature. So fast forward, because this story is very long. Unfortunately, one of the companies that we were involved with, they weren't above board. They were just basically using guys like me as straw buyers and utilizing our credit to purchase properties, and then they're pulling the equity out of it and using it to fund this extravagant lifestyle that they had. Fast forward a little bit more, the company wound up being forced into bankruptcy, and I was forced to learn about real estate in a way that I just never expected. I was left holding the bag on 7 properties. I had no idea what to do with them, how to rehab them, anything. I wound up losing those properties to the bank. So we lost over $2 million worth of real estate and finances that I had invested in the company.
Wow.
It hit us really hard. This is 2005, 2006. And then, of course, the market crashed 2007, 2008. So it was a nightmare for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But through that, I built a lot of relationships with other people that had properties, right? So they turned to me to ask me about what I knew about roofing, or if I could get roofing done, if I could get some siding done on one of their houses. So I started making contacts with really good subcontractors, and we just built a network from there. I was able to learn a lot along the way, and to get my licensing to be able to become a Class A general contractor here. So,
Nice.
So we learned it from the ground up, man. Do a lot of trial and error, but fortunately we are where we are today. We paid a lot for school. I like to say, but we've learned some really valuable lessons, and we're able to pass those lessons on to people now, right? I always like to say, I lost $2 million in this business. There's no reason why you should have to. So. Yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell what it got us here. The story's a lot longer, but
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. But no, I want to tap into some of the parts of the story though, like especially, with that company that was using you as like a straw buyer.
Sure.
Were there any warning signs that you probably didn't notice them back then, but looking back on it now, because like maybe somebody else is in that same position,
Sure.
so you could help them out by saying the warning signs that you may
Yeah,
have seen.
yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. So looking back at it in hindsight, of course, there were warning signs. Properties that were supposed to be getting rehabbed and developed and ready for rental. Section 8 was a big thing for us back then. We needed to get the properties ready for Section 8 inspections and all those things. Unfortunately, now that I think about it, the work just wasn't getting done, right? Of course, we would set a timeline and say, look, man, we just purchased this property. We need to get it up and running and have it rent ready in the next 30 days. Well, 60 days would come to pass and nothing was done, right? And of course, they give you the old song and dance. Well, we're going to get to it. We got XYZ going on, blah, blah, blah. So that was a big red flag that I really just didn't pay attention to, because I trusted in them and trusted that they knew what they were doing, as opposed to me, having the knowledge and having the research and figuring it out for myself. I just kind of put it in someone else's hands, and that was a major mistake that I made. So, that was definitely, if anything, one of the red flags that I noticed. It was a big problem.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, and like that specific company, like where'd you meet them at?
Okay, so I met them through some friends. Back then, I used to manage a bunch of nightclubs here locally, so I knew a lot of people around town.
Yeah.
One of my buddies who used to frequent the club, he actually was one of the straw buyers that we came to find out later on. He was invested with the company, so he kind of turned me on to them.
Gotcha.
In the beginning, I saw he was doing well. He was making good money, but in that straw buyer situation, what they do is to pull you in.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, for instance, you have a property and they're going to sell the property from you to me.
Mm-hmm.
When they do that, they cash you out, maybe 10 grand,
Mm-hmm.
give me 10 grand as the buyer. I'm walking into it making money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the pull and the attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, all of the other money that was in equity was supposed to be used to renovate the property. But that's what they were pulling out for themselves.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? So now, if there's $100,000 worth of equity in this property, they're giving you 10, giving me 10, that's 80 grand that they're not using on the property. They're using that to go to Vegas or go play golf in Spain or all the other stuff that they were doing back then,
Wow.
So that and imagine that times 400 houses.
Mm-hmm.
The company was valued at over $30 million in assets. We had 400 houses in the Hampton Roads area. There wasn't a neighborhood that you could go into that we didn't have a house, under the control of the management company.
Dang.
Yeah,
Wow. That's crazy.
It was a pretty big deal,
Yeah, and you said that was before 08, right? That was like 05 or 06.
Yeah, that was like 06.
Yeah.
06, 07, yep. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so it really blew up, man. And unfortunately, a lot of people got hurt behind that, man. I was supposed to have my wedding in 2007. I couldn't give my wife the wedding we were supposed to have, Just a lot of things just kind of snowballed. Credit went from 750 to 4 something maybe, Yeah, so it was a really tough period, man. But, like I said, we learned a lot through it and how we approach things now. One of the things, though, that I'd like to point out really quickly is that it made me timid about the business, right? For a long period of time, I didn't want to borrow money from people. I didn't want to go to a lender and borrow money because I didn't want to be responsible for this $200,000 that I had to borrow to renovate a property. I just didn't want that responsibility because of what I had just gone through. But I would like to say to your guests that don't be afraid of it. I mean, because you have to trust your instincts and know that you have guys like myself, you, that can lend good advice, to help people get through the process and not be afraid to take a risk and step out into this business. That kind of hindered my growth. Excuse me. That hindered my growth for a long time. I should have been where I am now a long time ago, right? But I slowly walked into it because I didn't want to get hurt.
Okay, all right. So PSA, so we did some research and it looks like a lot of people that are watching, you're not subscribed to the channel. So please do me a favor because I'm giving you guys these free videos, free high-level information on real estate and real estate investing. Please, just for me. All you gotta do is click the subscribe button, just subscribe to the channel. Oh, also, just bonus, just share it with a friend who can find this helpful. Thank you.
Again, I couldn't take another hit like that, So it was a pretty rough period of time, but don't be afraid, man. Step out there and get to it. There's good things on the other side of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like they say, scared money don't make no money.
That's true.
Now, of course, you got to be educated. You got to be smart and calculate in the decisions that you're making. So, like, there's always those random people online that are like, hey, I'll lend money. I'm not necessarily saying do that.
Right.
You always want to, check your sources, see like, okay, are they reputable? What's their reviews? What's their reputation?
Absolutely.
Do you know anybody in the markets that's used them? Things like that. But, going back to that time, I always call it like the Wild West of real estate, that 05 to 08, 09 period. I mean, I was in kindergarten and like preschool
I knew it was
around
coming.
there. So like, I don't really know too much,
Sure.
but I do, I've heard experiences all the time. And it's so crazy to me, like even on like the regular like purchase side, like you could really just go to a bank and just say, hey, I make $5 million a year.
Yeah.
And it give you a loan for that. You could work at
Absolutely.
McDonald's and own a mansion. Like that's why we had that, the huge crash in 2008 is because of issues like that. So like, even though now like how lending has changed and it can be very annoying, I'll say, I'm doing this DSCR right now where I have to turn in docs every single day. I'm like, man, oh my gosh. But it's safe now, at least, it protects everybody versus back then, it didn't really protect anybody.
Nah, man, it was too easy. You could say your name and get a loan.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. It's just, the lending practices have changed for the better. Again, it does get a little bit, annoying for us because we're trying to move fast and get projects done. And, it does safeguard us from issues like 2008. Hopefully we never have to experience that again.
100%.
But you're 100% right, man. I really look forward to the day where these lending practices will even out a little bit more because at least where the experienced person is involved, because guys like us, we do this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We would think that we could move through it a little bit smoother, but
Mm-hmm.
of course we still run into those roadblocks and red tape that we have to get through to
Yeah.
get loans. But anybody that's just getting into this, it's good for them to have those safeguards in place.
Yeah.
You don't want to get another wild, wild west, man.
Yeah.
We just can't
100%.
afford it, So yeah.
So let's still talk about that time period, right? That 4 year, that really rough period.
Mm-hmm.
What kept you in real estate? Like, what made you not want to just pursue something else? Because that's going through a lot.
I mean, well, one of the things, man, it was a lot of personal decisions, as far as the business that I was in the nightclub industry, and not just nightclub, but we actually were promoting a lot of different shows. So that nightlife for me at the time really was something that I had to pull away from because I had a family to focus on, right? It's just spending late nights out, days upon days out of town, promoting shows and all that stuff. I was making my way away from that. So I leaned more into the real estate. I'm like, okay, this is something that I could do here locally. I'm getting more and more clients calling me that want me to help them with their renovations and things like that. I started working on the licensing, which really helped boost our business quite a bit because now we can present ourselves to anybody as a Class A general contractor, licensed in commercial and residential, so we can take on more clients and do bigger projects. So that was just, more important for me at the time. So I just leaned into it, and fortunately, it worked out. I mean, it took a little bit of time. Of course, in those days, you have to go through a lot of different cycles with subcontractors and guys that say they could do this, and you give a guy a check and you don't see him for a week or two and all that kind of stuff. But we were able to muddle through all that stuff now, so we got a really good team in place. But yeah, I just decided that I was attracted to the business in a way that it allowed me to be a little bit creative, right? I'm not naturally that guy, before it's even built, and I got to hone in on that skill. So yeah, I mean, I just leaned into it, man, and I'm thankful that I did.
Now, I want you also to speak to, like, because I've spoken to other people and they have a similar background, like, as far as the nightclub life, and they transition to real estate. Like, is there some sort of, like, big benefit in that? Because I've seen that a lot of different times, like going from nightclub to real estate. What would you say is, I'm trying to think of the best word to say it, like one of the biggest advantages of like keeping that nightclub lifestyle or having those same connections and such versus also stepping into a new field like entrepreneurship or real estate?
Right. Well, I think my experience in the nightclub business was, I mean, it was really good. Like I actually was, we made a lot of ground in that business. I used to promote a lot of comedians, some of the top comedians that you can think of today. I've worked with them.
Hey, you want to make more money in real estate and real estate investing? Become a closer today. In Closure Society, we'll give you all the mentorship, the coaching, the training, the resources, scripts, and the deals. Yes, we will give you the deals. Partnerships and community is all found in Closure Society. So if you want to make the most money in real estate, which is what you want to do, right? Become a closer today. This is for real estate agents, real estate investors, and no, you don't need a real estate license to make money in real estate. You don't need to be in real estate full time. You don't even need to know what a real estate is to make money in real estate. And with Closure Society, we will supply you with everything. So remember, to join Closure Society, go to closuresociety.org. Follow us on Instagram also at Closure Society. Let's make the most money in real estate and let's close these deals. Closers.
A lot of the rap artists, things like that, and it's very lucrative, right? So turning from that business and transitioning into anything else, I have to maintain obviously a certain lifestyle, a certain level of income. So, there weren't a lot of things for me at the time that I could turn to that I would still be able to make the type of income that I needed to make to support my life and my family's lifestyle other than real estate. Back then, I mean, you could do a renovation project and, walk away from it and clear $100,000, $200,000, just depending on the project, obviously. We don't really see numbers like that too much these days, but, there's no home runs like that nowadays. So now you have to do volume. You have to do a lot, so it's just a matter of staying in that lane to where, you can create a way to make finances outside of what I was doing. So that real estate allowed that for me,
Now transitioning back to, the real estate part, right? I know you had mentioned like, giving a check to subcontractors and you don't hear from them again. would you say that's, one of the learning mistakes that you made?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the learning mistakes. What would you say, like, your top 3 learning mistakes, learning lessons that you had were when you
Okay.
were starting
Okay.
into developing?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I would say one, learning subcontractors and how they work, right? That was a mistake for me because you assume that, well, at least I did, just because of my nature. I see the best in people. I see
I'm
good
the
in
same
people,
way,
right?
man. I'm the same way.
And I tend to trust, probably more than I should.
Mhm.
My wife will tell you all about that.
Mhm.
That's kind of one of my downfalls. But I trusted people,
Yeah.
to do what they said they were going to do because that's who I am, right?
Mhm.
And I just see that in other people. So that was a big learning curve for me to understand how people work and listening to my instincts, where that was concerned. One of the other mistakes that I would have to say that I made in the beginning was how I assessed a property, right? I mean, for me, when I walked into a project, I didn't think that there was anything that I couldn't do, right? And I didn't see limitations, which can be good and bad, right? In this particular business, especially when it comes to renovations, you have to be mindful of that because you can get too far out over your skis and not really budget for it. So I guess budgeting for a project is something I had to learn the hard way, right? I had to pay attention to how I budgeted projects because I would go into it thinking I could renovate this house for $50,000.
Yeah.
And then once I got into it and I'm 3/4 of the way through, I'm at $75,000.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So that was something that I had to really pay attention to, learn through making mistakes is that I have to, assess a project better in my budgeting. The third thing I would venture, one thing I didn't do early on is establish relationships with the municipalities. Because we operate in a world where we have to get licenses and we have to get permits and all of these things, I didn't understand the value of those relationships with the municipalities, right? Because you can apply for a permit and you could be, your permit could be sitting down there for 3 or 4 months, while you're just losing money because obviously you're paying interest on the loan that you have. So that was a mistake that I made early on, not really understanding those relationships and how to foster them.
Yeah.
So yeah. So if I had to pick 3, those would be 3 of the biggest mistakes.
Okay, got you. Now fast forward to today, as far as your deals and such. Where are you finding?
Deals come to me in a lot of different ways, right? I have a network of people that I've dealt with over these years, real estate agents. Sometimes just word of mouth from a neighbor, many different ways that they come to me. And then of course I have to do my due diligence and find, to understand whether or not it's actually a good deal. Yeah, but those are the primary resources where they come from. Real estate agents, my wholesalers, and just word of mouth through neighbors where I might be working on a house in this particular neighborhood. Joe Schmo, the neighbor, comes by and says, hey man, I got a house around the corner, my mother left me and I'm not doing anything with it. You think you might want to be interested in buying it? And I'm like, well, yeah, let's take a look at it. Yeah, so we're fortunate that way, just built a network over time.
For sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it
I'm
takes
glad that you mentioned that, right? So for real estate agents and wholesale, because we're gonna have a lot of those people who are watching this episode, and one of their questions they're gonna ask is, how can they bring value to you? How can they work with you? So like, if an agent or wholesaler they bring you a deal, like, what are some of the things that you're looking for?
Okay. Well, that's a good question too, man. You got a bunch of good questions, man.
Appreciate
But
it.
nah, man. So one of the things I'm looking for is if they have done some of the homework, right? Because a lot of people will bring me a project, but they haven't done any research on it whatsoever, right? So my time is valuable. When you're building 10, 15 houses, I don't have a lot of time in my day, right? So I count on the wholesalers and the agents that bring deals to me to do some due diligence before they do that, right? At least find out if the lot is buildable, what the dimensions of the lot are, if it has water and sewer accessibility. These things help me determine whether or not it's something I want to move. So those are the key things I would say, to look out for when you bring deals to me. Do some homework on them first, because it would cut down on a lot of time of me making a decision whether or not I want to, in this business, time is money, man.
100%.
So we gotta make the most of it.
Yeah, 100%. Same thing would happen to me like on flips. People will send me deals, but literally what they'll do is they'll send me the Facebook link and they'll be mad I don't respond. Man, you're making more work for me at this
Right.
point. Like, now I gotta go look it up, I gotta do all that. Nah, not that. But
Sure.
versus if somebody, they actually send me a deal, they underwrite it, they're like, here's your possible, your profit margins,
Yeah.
all of that. I'm like, okay, cool. Now we can actually do something.
Absolutely.
So it's just bringing value at the end of the day. Now, all right, so typically, let's say the hierarchy of real estate investing, right?
Mhm.
Typically, people start out as wholesalers, then they'll move up to flipping,
Mhm.
then they'll move up to, let's say, a builder, right? Let's say the builder's at the top of the chain.
Sure.
But a lot of people get stuck at this. Or I would say, what do you think is the biggest benefit from going from
So I like to think of it in this way.
Mhm.
If you're moving from a flipper to a builder,
Mhm.
you actually get to learn more about the process. Because a lot of times when people are flipping houses, they're already dealing with a structure that basically what they're going in and doing is cosmetic work. You
Yeah.
know, they'll go in and maybe, renovate the kitchens and the bathrooms, some new paint, rip out carpet, put some laminate in, types of things. For me, the biggest advantage is that the biggest advantage you have moving from flipping to new construction is that you actually get to go through the process from start to finish. You learn what it takes to do it from the ground up. You got to go figure out if you can even build a house on this particular property, what that all entails. You get to understand and learn plans,
Yeah.
and you actually get to learn surveying. All of these different aspects of the business you get to learn when you build new construction homes. Aside from that, it's cleaner work, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just cleaner work. You get to go in and take a blank slate and build it from the ground up, as opposed to going in and, gutting a house out, and you got all this demo, and you're ripping off the roof and you're rebuilding the roof. All these things take a lot of time, a lot of energy. For me, I found new construction is just cleaner, it's faster, your budget is intact, you know what the house costs to build it, and it's just
One. So all the time on the internet, I'll see these plots of land for sale. Now, it may be cheap. I don't know if you remember, but like in 2020, there was kind of like this craze going around. It was like buy land. It was like $1,000. Things. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. I remember.
How do you know a piece of land is actually like good, like a good investment where you can build on it and you can make money from it? Because from that 2020, I know a lot of people lost a lot of money because they didn't know about having to pay property taxes on land, and a lot of times they weren't even buildable. They were buying like swampland.
Yeah, yeah, it happens all the time, man. I see it all the time, and it's that. But sometimes other people are stuck with it, right? And they're just trying to figure out ways to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it's not cool. But I mean, usually it happens. What I would advise a lot of people to do, or most people, contact, a good real estate agent. Because real estate agents generally can take a look at a piece of property and understand and assess it for themselves. They've been in the business. They know what a good piece of property looks like. They know what the neighborhood, comps things. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't have the resources to dig further into it to find out if it's buildable. If that's the case, that's where you want to contact the builder, or a developer. For us to go in, take a look at it ourselves. We'll talk to the zoning department. We'll talk to the erosion and sediment department to find out if there's any issues with the land that would prevent it. So yeah, definitely just seek advice before you sign on the dotted line for any piece of property. Please don't sign anything until you actually have somebody that knows about the business to come out, take a look at it, and assess it. It seems like to me back in the days, I didn't have, and maybe I would have if I would have done more research. That's why I really try to stress that to people, man. Don't be ashamed to ask the questions. Contact Chris, contact me. Like, let us come out and help you out to make sure that you're not buying something that you just can't do anything with, man. You'll be stuck with a piece of property for forever, for nothing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you said, this is what a platform like this is for, to
Sure.
give the education. That's why I think like now is a great time to get started in really any business, because so much good information is now available versus before it was kind of like it was harder to get access to information. You kind of had to do a lot of trial and error, but now you can see like from your trials, from my trials, our errors, so people who are coming up now, they don't have to make those same mistakes.
Exactly.
But speaking of that, we talked about your top 3, learning about, let's say, your top 3 benefits of being a builder. Like what?
I love the right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I never really wanted to be one to sit in an office or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I did, you know, it just I was always looking beyond that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so the very first benefit for me is that I have the flexibility to do right. You know, and generally that's work,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, I'm able to do it in a way that I'm happy doing it, right? And, you know, the other thing, it allows it a certain lifestyle, right? You know, we're able to make decent money doing what we're doing, and I'm able to provide for my family. I'm able to send my kids to college, and I'm able to take a vacation when I want to. Not as many as this guy, but I'm just teasing. But no, I mean, you know, it's great to be able to do that, man.
Yeah.
You know, just say, look, man, you know, we're going to, you know, Bali in a couple of months, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this year alone, I knocked off Bali, Africa, you know, Turks and Caicos,
Nice,
Jamaica,
nice.
you know, and we're going to Colombia in December. So, you know,
Yeah,
like, you're able to do that stuff, man, and have fun. You know, we only live for a short period of time, relatively. Let's
yeah,
enjoy it, you know.
yeah.
So that's I just make you know, like, I'm a people person, man,
Mhm.
and I get to meet good people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we get to establish these relationships with people, man, that you know, we probably would have never met otherwise. You know, and build on that. So, you know, I love being around people. I love you know, fostering relationships, man. You know, iron sharpens iron, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, in a few years from now, who knows, man? We might be building some houses together.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
that's the
saying?
goal.
And just keep, you know, so but those would be the three benefits that I see, you know, I really enjoy about real estate and the business that I'm in.
For sure.
Yeah.
And number two, you kind of did a humble flex. You said decent money, but then you mentioned you went to Turks and Caicos, you went to you going to all these
It
places.
catches all that stuff, man.
Decent money. Now that's
Yeah.
great money right
Yeah.
there. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask the question to know, how would you say can you make a six-figure profit from one deal?
From one,
Or near a six-figure profit?
I
Is it
would,
likely?
it
Okay.
is likely. You know, I would venture to say, out of 10 deals, you may get 2 that where you'll six-figure profit,
Okay.
right? You can get pretty close, though. You know, it just depends.
Well, let's take it down then. Let's say, because the average American salary right now, I believe,
Mhm.
is around 65K for the year.
Right.
So, how about out of 10, how likely are you to make at least 65K?
I would say 10 out of 10.
Sheesh.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. As long as you're doing it right, right?
Okay.
I mean, there's just a lot of other things that go into that, but
Okay.
you can attain that pretty much every time, you know.
Dang.
But you just have to have the right team of people in place, you know.
Mhm.
Those subcontractors are just so important, man. I can't,
Mhm.
you know, and doing your due diligence, you know, beforehand, making sure that, you know, all of the numbers work. I generally work the numbers backwards, you know.
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
go into a and we'll look at, I'll talk to you and I'll say, hey, Chris, you know, what is this neighborhood comping out at? What are the
Mhm.
houses selling for here?
Yep.
You know, and then we start working backwards from there.
Mhm.
And once I see that, okay, you know, we paid $50,000 for the lot, we got 200 invested in the construction of the house. You know, we take out all our commissions and fees and all these other things. And at the end of it, if I'm sitting with $80,000, that's a good day at the office.
Great
You
day at the
know, yeah,
office.
you can't be mad about that. And you do
Yeah.
that, you know, 10 times a year. That's, you know, it's good living. You know.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what I make, so don't be calling me trying to borrow money.
Don't be
'Cause
pocket
I'm broke.
watching. Yeah, don't be
No.
pocket watching. None of that.
But nah, I'm just saying. I mean, you know, the reality is very beneficial to be in this business, and you can make a lot of money.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've given us some great, knowledge, some great free game. But I know people are going to want to possibly know more. They're going to want to reach out to you, follow your
Sure.
journey. So tell them, where can they follow you at? Where can they find you?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. On all platforms, it'll be Caesar Said So. That's CAESAR _ said _ so. Caesar Said So. Yeah, man. And you can follow me on Instagram, YouTube. You know, check out our page, man. We're always doing some great stuff around town, giving out some good advice as to how you can get your business started, get started in real estate or whatever that may be. You know, we just want to see you win, man. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
You know, I'm making sure people win, not get into these things that I got into earlier on. I want to see you succeed, man. So yeah, man, I appreciate your platform, man. I mean, you know, I really do, admire what you're doing, man, and just really, not just talking about it, man, but doing some
Let's
work.
do
together,
it.
man.
Yeah,
You know what
let's
I'm
do
saying?
it.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yep, absolutely.
Julius Hayes.
Appreciate you, brother.
He's that guy when it comes to real estate development. And if you want to make more money in real estate investing.